Arora, also joining us on the show from Emkay Global. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today on NDTV Profit. Let me begin, Madan, with your take and some of those comments made in the Financial Times interview. It segues in very well with the conversation and the chatter around India, and we talk about it day in and day out from the market's perspective, from the perspective of foreign funds coming into India, etc. But on the basis of economic outlook, and look at the Q2 GDP numbers, look at the RBI's upping the estimate, do you think we are really on the cusp of a takeoff?
No, I think that's absolutely right, Tamanna, that we are on the cusp of a takeoff. The reason being that if you look at this solitary indicator, which is probably the best indicator of prospects of any particular economy, for the last 2 years, we have seen that the Indian economy has been the best performing one, growing in this region of, say, 6.5% or 7%. Now, that is one part of it. The second thing is that we are very much on the stage which has been set for us to grow at a higher rate in the coming years. Now, if you look at the way in which most countries went post-COVID, you actually went down sharply and countries are still struggling to get up. So we're talking in terms of kind of a stagnation in the global economy, in most of the larger economies, and probably something which it didn't turn out to be as bad as what was expected. But we are generally thinking that 2024 will be a slow year for the world economy because of what the central banks have done. However, if you look at India, I think even though we are going to register a growth rate close to 7%, that's what the RBI is saying for this financial year, I think the growth is going to continue on this particular path. So that's why we are saying that on the cusp, we're just on the border of actually of a takeoff. So I think all the prerequisites which are required for growth are very much in place. And in case we do have a good monsoon, I'm quite sure that we could replicate this growth of again 7% for next year. So what this really means for foreign investors is there's a big opportunity. I don't think there are any minuses which I can see right now. Policy framework is very good. What RBI is doing, what the government is doing on the fiscal side. So all we are waiting is for this push to come on both consumption and investment. So therefore, to say that we are on the cusp of a takeoff is probably the right way of looking at the Indian economy.
All right. What does that takeoff actually mean, and what will it look like is the question. Let me go across to Madhavi Arora on that point. So, India is a story that has been celebrated for a while. But whenever we talk about quote-unquote a takeoff or, being the fifth largest economy or reaching the $5 trillion mark, the question also comes about, is everyone growing equally? Is your per capita income moving up? Is your rural consumption going up? Now, talk about that, Madhavi, and what would truly in India look like if it took off in the way that is being envisioned?
So you're talking about the development sector of the economy. Clearly, there's a long way to go with regard to us matching the likes of China in terms of per capita. But definitely the socio-economic color of the economy, has been changing, especially for the rural and semi-rural sectors. I mean, look at the way the subsidy targeting has been done by the government of India. So even though the government has reduced subsidy burden, but the kind of targeting they have done has essentially implied that there's been a general upliftment of the bottom of the pyramid. So there's not necessarily as much dissatisfaction in the lower economic strata as it used to be at one point in time. So I think to that extent, there's obviously an improvement. It's a very long way to go. That said, on a more broad growth point of view, of course, as you mentioned earlier, Parth, there's been a lot of supply side measures that the government of India has done over the last few years. And of course, the kind of reforms that they have, undertaken, which were not very popular at one point in time, but, they have yielded results in some form or the other over the years. And now I think we are sort of enjoying the fruits of that to some extent.
So we're enjoying the fruits of that to some extent, but even as we speak, there are more policy measures being put into place. I want to talk to you, Madan, a bit about the whole manufacturing story. India has always been a service sector-led economy. Can manufacturing actually fire up? We're talking now, and there was a report today as well, that India could be the mirror image of where China was when manufacturing started picking up. And that's the big bet. We've seen some of it fructify under the PLI scheme. But how big is the scope for this, firstly, and secondly, what are the challenges?
Tamanna, I would like to divide this particular issue to two parts. One are the headline numbers which I spoke of, which are obviously very impressive. But second, if I come into this area which you're talking of right now in terms of manufacturing, I think for quite some time we have been talking in terms of manufacturing improving its share in our GDP to 25%. Now, unfortunately, what we have seen is that most of the growth which we have seen in the economy has been coming more from the services side, where I think we have probably reached the stage of maturity out there. But when you look at manufacturing, I think that has been a major lacking. So I think the government is trying very hard, but at the end of the day, it is the private sector which has to react and take on these opportunities. So PLI is a good scheme. I think all of us are talking of it. But if you ask a question as to which sectors have actually benefited, I think a large part of that is the electronics, that's your mobile phones which you're talking of. And even there's a large component of imports which are coming in. So it gets
चलिए आपको एसआईपी करने वालों के किस्से सुनाते हैं। माया की एसआईपी से ड्रीम
equality of income, job creation. I think the manufacturing sector is something which has to fire up. So while there is a lot of scope potential there, which everybody sees, I mean, we're going to get those good GDP growth numbers of maybe 7 to 8% in the next 3-4 years. But the important part will be how does this percolate to the lowest common denominator? How does the manufacturing sector pick up? And just remember one thing, that even today, a lot of what is done at the bottom of the pyramid has been because of direct government intervention. It's not been a case of saying that people are getting those kind of jobs and you're able to buy your own house, you're able to get your own cooking gas, so on and so forth. Most of it has been provided by the government. And remember another fact, that even today, the government is providing free food to 800 million people, which shows that there are certain weaknesses in the economy which will have to be overcome. And that can only happen in case the private sector fires and we're in a situation where the manufacturing sector does well. So I think that is the biggest challenge. And I think the progress even post-COVID has been very, very tardy on this particular front. So I would say that this is a challenge for the economy. Headline numbers are definitely going to be reached. We will continue to be a good investment option for foreign investors, but we will have to take care of this. And this, I don't think the government can do anything much. It has to be done from the private sector.
Yeah, also some concerns on the fisc over a period of time. If this kind of government support continues unabated, of course, it was needed post-COVID, but for how long will be the question. Just one important point I want to take with Madhavi, which is the stated goal of India being a developed nation by 2047. Now, this becomes important in the context that we're speaking today, because it's a real tangible kind of a goal, layered by clear indicators of what it means if India is a developed nation. Doable at the current rate of growth, or how much more do we need to speed up?
It's going to be a long run process. I mean, besides we're talking 2047, I don't even know how things would really pan out. The global business cycle will be very different in the next 10 to 20 years. So, I mean, it could be challenging, but, let's hope that it is achievable. Why should we think and start our premise by being negative about it?
No, that's true. But my question is to what extent do we need to notch up growth very specifically?
So at this point in time, I think
we're growing between 7 to 8%. We're growing between 7 to 8%, hopefully. If we consistently grow, is that enough to reach the developed nations tag by 2047?
So I think that is what the target is. I don't think the immediate term the policymakers are trying to even overheat the economy or trying to even, fiscally very loose with regard to their behaviors. In fact, I think they're very comfortable with the 6-7% growth that we are at this point in time. Of course, the aim has to be growing beyond 8% on a secular basis for the next 10-15 years to be able to reach that level that you talked about. But I think near term, there is no policy rush. There is no unwanted policy stimulus on a net basis. Of course, there will be targeted benefits that they will talk about, they will probably focus on. But, on net basis, the economy would probably be still on a fiscally sort of a conservative path is what I understand. And to some extent, even on regulatory point of view as well, there'll be a lot of tightening that could happen in the coming years. So I don't think that near term you would see the growth path to be exceeding 6 to 7%. The coming year itself will be very tricky, assuming that you will see a slowdown in the world growth order. And not even a recession, even a slowdown would lead to India's growth to be somewhere hugging close to 6% or lower. So we will obviously grow with the global cycle over the next 10, 15, 20 years. We'll have to outgrow the world, of course, to the extent that we reach the developed world target.
Pretty much.
All right, important point there. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Madhavi.